Okay, good day everyone. This is a slightly different presentation where we will discuss how a REIT makes money to pay us a dividend, right? Quite a lot of the information I'm using here comes from Retirement's blog, right? So do pop by and give him a visit, right? The links from the articles that I've used quite extensively, I'll put in the links below this video, right? So anyway, just to give him credit again that this is from this article, right, which will be linked in the video description below, right? So this is how a REIT actually gains its revenue, right? So they take in money through owning a building, and then they lease the building out to people, and people pay them rents, right? So there is gross revenue from directly managed assets, right? They also, this is the main bulk of their income lah, right? And this should be the main way they make money, right? However, sometimes there's a little bit of money from financial income, right? What's financial income? For example, they have some money, they leave in the bank, then there's interest from their money, right? So that is financial income. Also, some cases like, for example, Keppel DC REIT, right? So just to give you an example, last time we did cover Keppel DC REIT, right? They sold a property to this Macquarie, right? And when they sold the property to Macquarie, right, they also took $90 million from this sale and then reinvested into this Australian data center node with a 8.5-year tenure. That means to say this is money they lend to Macquarie, alright, and this money they lend to Macquarie is giving an interest rate of almost 7%, right, with annual escalation built in, right? So this is a pretty good interest rate, right? So this is money that they can collect, and it will pop up as finance income, right? So that's for Keppel DC REIT, right? So other REITs may have income support, especially the new ones. So for example, when a parent, right, want to lease a REIT at IPO, and this REIT organically, that means on its own, can only yield 7% based off the price they want to list it, right? Then investors want a higher yield, for example, 9%, right? So just to list the REIT, right, the parent can actually give income support, right? So income support is artificial money from somewhere else that doesn't organically come from the REIT's rentals, right? And is to boost the to boost the distribution so that the REIT looks more attractive, right? So income support comes from normally the parent when they try to list a new REIT that is not fully matured in terms of generating its own revenue from its directly managed assets, right? And finally, divestment gain and losses, right? So if you sell a property over valuation, that means to say the property is valued 10 million, you sell at 12 million, right? The extra 2 million you can actually put here, and in the end, it'll try to be it'll try to flow down into the dividends that is paid out to a shareholder. So Mapletree Logistics Trust, right? If you look at our last video, in the last few videos, they are quite famous for doing this, right, and doing this well, okay? So after we look at this, right, after we look at gross revenue, we have to minus off operating expenses, right, because the building needs to be maintained, you need to pay the cleaners, security guards, etc., alright, and after gross revenue minus property expenses, right, you get NPI, right? So NPI is the next matrix we normally discuss in a REIT, and then later NPI we have to minus off management fee because someone needs to manage these people running the building, right, and managing the REIT itself, right? Finance expenses, because REITs run on debt, right, so they have money they borrow from the bank, and therefore they need to pay the interest rate based off this money they borrow from the bank. So that's finance expenses, right? Tax, we understand, trust expense, anything related to the company's running expenditure here, right? So after we NPI minus off all these fees, right, and then we plus finance income, right, then we call this operating profit from directly managed assets, okay? So with this step, right, we'll jump over to the distribution statement, right? So what do we do with this money, right? So sometimes we have excess money coming from assets we do not directly manage. So what is an example of this? You can look at Mapletree Pan Asia Commercial Trust, which we discussed recently. You can see the gross revenue and operating expenses, property operating expense and NPI, right? You can see below here, okay, I'm so sorry, I don't know whether it's cut off or not, but it says here that gross revenue, property operating expenses, NPI, and net financial costs do not include contributions from the Pinnacle and Gundam, right? Because this one is not directly managed, right? So this will be added in later. Okay, so this will be added in here, right? So the Pinnacle and Gundam would be in here because not considered directly managed assets. Alright, so this purple part will be the contribution from that Pinnacle and Gundam, right? Then when we look at this section here, alright, sometimes the amount of money here that they are supposed to pay in management fees, right, instead of paying cash, they can pay in units, right? And then whatever is left over we have discussed already lah. Okay, so then we move on, and we can add on release of retention of capital. That means to say sometimes they have excess cash lying around, alright, because they're trying to smooth out the dividends. For example, I think let's say REIT, right? So I think I cannot remember why they had excess cash, but their excess cash they didn't one shot give it out. They actually gave it out over a longer period because they know that later on the Berlin campus will have a drop in collection of rental lah. So they tried to keep some cash so that later on they can release some capital to buffer the distributions, right? So anyway, with that, right, then we can finally go towards distribution to unit holders, right? So at this point, normally management can retain up to 10% for working capital. Sometimes this is for AEI, they want to enhance the assets, right? Sometimes they have other reasons for retaining some capital, right? So the reason is 10% is because they're trying to save on tax lah. If they retain more than 10%, I believe they are taxed, right? So they don't want to do that lah. So normally they retain only up to 10%, right? So not going to talk about this, right? So this from retirement also from Vince, right? So the DPU from operations is derived from dividing distributions from operations by outstanding shares, right? So the focus of REITs distribution should always be DPU from operations because this is their actual business, right? Not the distributed DPU, as this can be manipulated to a certain extent, right? So income support and divestments can only boost DPU in the short term. However, there are exceptional cases, right, which have consistently included income support and divestment proceeds in their distributions. So we have a look at the charts, right? Right, so we look at here at CapitaLand Ascenders REITs. Okay, the top part here, right, is actually the actual DPU from income support, from management fees, and from operations, right? So we want to see a lot of blue color, all right, and then the other colors are not so good, all right. So you can see CapitaLand Ascenders REIT is quite healthy. Like if we look at this is the absolute amount, this is the percentage, right? So we try to look at the percentage first, right? So easier to see lah. You can see that all above 95% that come from operations, right? That means its core business is generating the money that flows into your pockets as DPU, right? And then when we look at this absolute amount, we can track how their actual operations is performing, right? You can see it's go up, go down, go up, go down, go down, go down, go up, go up, go down, right? So it's a bit up down lah, which explains I think their performance isn't so good, especially in recent times. Alright. If we look at the DPU component percentage, I think this is actually relatively healthy lah, right? So very little, like if you ask me if this part, right, income support disappear, management fees no longer paid in units is actually paid in cash instead disappear, that means to say this 2.7% of the DPU that normally is paid to management in units currently will be paid in cash in the future. That means it will disappear, right? 2.7% of the DPU will disappear if they are paid in cash, right? Actually, I think I'm okay with it. Like it's a 3% drop or 3.5% drop at best, right? So I think that is fine, right? We can look at other REITs which are a bit more risky lah, in my opinion, right? This is my opinion, not just a personal opinion, right? So you can see management fee paid unit is very large percentage, right? 25%, and proceeds from the investment is 9.1%, alright? Income support is 5.7%. So actually a large part of these REITs distribution, right, comes from things that are non-operational, right? So that means it's not its core business lah, alright? So if management will choose to take its fees in cash instead, right, then 25% of these REITs distribution will disappear, right? So that to me is quite a big change, right? And therefore I would not like to take this risk, right? It may be that nothing happens, right, and things go on well, right, and I think that could be the case moving forward, no issue there. But 25% plus 9.1% plus 5.7% is almost 40%. It's almost 40% that is not operational. And for me, I don't really like to see a DPU that comes from this kind of stuff that may not be recurring in nature and it's not their core business. Right, so you look at other REITs, right? Mapletree Logistics Trust. Okay, again, one of the concerns is that if you look at operational, right, is not really moving anywhere, right? You can see that, and as the years go by, right, I think the worry or the concern is the management fees paid in units is getting higher and higher. So 0.6, 3.7, 4.9, 7.1, 8.2, 10.6, 13.2, 12.12, right? So this is getting a larger and larger proportion of the distributions that is given out as dividends, right? And you can see that proceeds from divestments also getting larger in general, right? Here it's a bit low, here it's larger, right? So my question is, what happens when this 9.3% is gone, right? Because we cannot think that we can always make profit off the sales of our properties. That's my opinion. I mean, it's entirely possible that they carry on doing well, selling properties, and that's part of their skill set. It's possible, right? But I'm just saying that if I'm on the more conservative end, I wouldn't consider this to be a long-term replicable strategy, right? So OUE REIT, okay, this one is not so much the percentage of DPU that comes from it, but more that is operating DPU, right, is sliding down quite badly, right? So this blue line is actually the average of the operating DPU. Right, so it's DPU from operations, right, the average, right? So you can see if this line is sloping down for the absolute value, right, that's not a good thing lah. It doesn't matter that the 17% of income support drop until zero when your DPU is just shrinking so badly, alright? So yeah, this is just not a good performance, right? So this Suntec REIT, right, again, relatively high distribution from not the operating side, from the non-operating side lah. So it's about 26%, right? 26% is from the non-operating side. Okay, Ken, right? So yeah. So what about paying management fees in units, right? Why is it a good or bad thing, right? So it could be to me, paying management fees in unit can be good and bad. Some people say that it shows management alignment with unit holders. It's true if the management just keep the units, right? That means over time the management get more and more of the REIT, right? And taking care of the REIT is akin to taking care of themselves, right? However, I think we are not sure what happens to these units that we pay to management, right? They could just sell it off and then take the cash, right? Then that causes dilution down the road, right? So that means to say that paying management fees in units, right, when instead of paying cash, right, is actually kicking the can down the road, right? Because you are diluting the whole REIT, right? So if you keep increasing the number of shares that the REIT has, right, whenever you collect rent, right, you are going to share it with a bigger pie, right? You share with a bigger pie means you share with more shares, then each share will get less dividends, right? So paying fees in cash is a more conservative take lah, in my opinion. And if you look at what happens when things go bad, right? For example, to give you an example of what I understand, right? When Prime REIT, right, was in trouble, their share price dropped a lot, right? What happened was, instead of paying the management in units, which they used to do, they started to pay the management in cash. The reason is because when the share price dropped a lot, right, to pay the management in units, they have to pay a lot of units because each unit costs so little. Is so the share price is so low, right, that I have to dilute. I have to pay a lot of shares to get the amount of money required to pay the management, which means that paying management fees in units, right, is very dilutive when the share price is very undervalued, right? And that happens when bad things happen, right? The share price is very low, then you have to take the cash out of the REIT, and that's when the REIT needs the cash the most, right? So bad things happen together lah. So it could be that nothing bad happens, right? And then so paying management fees in units is okay, it's dilutive, but if the operational performance improves in the long run, right, it can cover up the fact that the the number of shares is increasing in the long run, right? So if the distribution is increasing more than the number of shares available because of dilution due to management fees paid in unit, then it's okay. The REIT will carry on growing very well, all right? But I think that's very hard to predict, all right? And I would prefer not to take such a chance if I can, right? I cannot remember what is the average that Vince from retirement told me, but I think it's something like 95%, right? That means to say the DPU from operations, right, in terms of percentage, right, the medium value is something like 95%, all right? Right, so anyway, these are some of the higher REITs that pay that the percentage distribution from management fees paid in units is the highest, right? So you can see Keppel REIT, Land Lease REIT, Digital Core, CDL Hospitality Trust, and Fraser Logistics and Commercial Trust, right? Not to say anything bad about these REITs. Okay, if their operational performance is good, then it's fine, right? So anyway, this Vince summary, but I'll just share, right? So there are manipulatable components in distributions, right? So include fees payable in units, which is the management fees, right? Income support, divestment proceeds, release of retention of capital, and the amount of distribution retention, right? This can be used to inflate the DPU, right? And we should focus on DPU from operations, right? So these are things that I think we can take away from this sharing, right? So with that, I'll end the presentation. Please note that none of this is a recommendation to buy or sell or any form of financial advice, right? And thank you for listening.